Thanks for staying with News at Prime tonight. Several South Africans are feared to be among dozens of foreign contractors killed or captured as they tried to escape Islamic militants in northern Mozambique. This follows an attack which began on Wednesday, hours after the French oil firm Total announced that it would resume work on its multi-billion-dollar liquid natural gas project. At least 2,600 people have died in the insurgency in northern Mozambique since 2017. For more on the story, we're joined by United Democratic Movement leader General Bantu Holomisa and Good Governance Africa Head of Program and Human Security, Stephen Buchanan-Clark. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Perhaps let me begin with you, General Holomisa, and your own understanding and analysis of the situation that's taking place in the northern parts of Mozambique right now.
Well, this conflict has been going on for some years now. Given that Mozambique is part of SADC, one would have expected that in terms of the agreements of SADC, that a brigade, SADC brigade, would always be ready. But the state of readiness is a little bit questionable, because even the people of South Africa who were trapped there, they just called South Africa for help and expected that South Africa would immediately send troops there. But there are protocols, unfortunately. Mozambique is a foreign country. If Mozambican government has not requested assistance from either South Africa or SADC, it will always be difficult to just jump in. But it's a wake-up call in that from now on, I think SADC brigade must get ready all the time. At some stage, though, the Mozambican authorities appealed to European Union to provide security for them. Why on earth did they undermine their immediate neighbors? I don't know. So far, I think the intelligence of South Africa and that of SADC must have long compiled a threat analysis which would lead to the tourists or the people of South Africa, the people who are in Mozambique, people who tossed Mozambique, would be informed that these are the critical areas which you must avoid. If you want to go there, having been warned, you do so at your own peril. I think I must stop there for now.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you believe that the South African government should have issued a travel advisory, especially for those traveling to the northern parts of Mozambique a long time ago?
They should be doing that periodically, because if they have an intelligence, proper intelligence, unless they are fast asleep, they should periodically issue that warning. And of course, the authorities in South Africa will always be constrained to immediately jump without a request from Mozambique.
Stephen, let me bring you in here, because one of the things that you also raise is that in order to fully be able to have a strategy that will help deal with the violence in Mozambique, we have to understand what's causing it. And as somebody who studies this field, what have you seen as some of the underlying contributors to this violence?
Absolutely. Quite rightly, as General Holomisa mentioned, this insurgency has been going on since 2017, October 2017. And since really 2018, GGA has been providing analytical coverage of Mozambique. And we've always emphasized as an institute that northern Mozambique needs a regionally coordinated and sequenced strategy which addresses the security dimensions of the conflict, the developmental aspects, and the dire humanitarian situation there. northern Mozambique, Cabo Delgado in particular, is the forgotten province. For decades, there's been underinvestment in the province, and this has become even more stark over the last 10 years with these massive LNG finds, some of the biggest investments in African history off the coast of Cabo Delgado and the Rovuma Basin. But what we see is generally these investments in natural resource industries in Mozambique. Historically, the profits from those investments have only accrued to a political elite very much connected with the military. So ordinary citizens have been left behind. There's a growing frustration, and it makes it easy for Islamist militants to pick up on these grievances and garner support. I place the blame on what happened this week. Firstly, at the Mozambican government's handling of this insurgency over the last 3 years. At first, they denied its existence, called it criminal activity. When the insurgency became obvious, they overemphasized, I think they still overemphasize the international nature of it as a way of downplaying any local grievances which could have validity. And instead of reaching out to SADC early on and asking for a regional strategy and support, develop a regional strategy and asking for support, they've rather engaged international actors from the EU to Portugal to the US last week on an ad hoc basis with no overarching strategy or framework. And I don't see how this is going to get us closer towards peace if they continue along this trajectory.
Right now, we're looking at a situation where there are concerns about South Africans who some have died, being among those that were part of, that were in this attack effectively. General Holomisa, what should the South African government be doing right now, in particular for its citizens that are among those who are counted as either having been attacked or even having been killed in this conflict?
Well, first of all, I think South Africa should answer certain questions and say, in the conflict taking place in Mozambique, do we have any national interest on what is happening there? Secondly, does South Africa understand what the Mozambican conflict is all about? So who is behind this conflict? And has South Africa attempted to use a solution-based method where we are well known of, where we would bring all the warring factions together to find a peace? So these are long-term initiatives which are necessary that the government of South Africa should seriously consider and escalate to them. It's not going to help for them to fold their arms and at the same time say we're sending troops there. The long run is that the enemy will classify South Africa as part of the problem of Mozambique. And when they retaliate, they will also retaliate, including South Africa. So we have to be clear of what is our national interest in Mozambique. If there is a need for us to protect Mozambique right now, let it be structured through SADC. And then we will be in a position to say, this is a project of SADC and we are protecting SADC, which has been known to be stable all these years. But I sense that the powers that be, sometimes their priorities are elsewhere.
Stephen, many South Africans are worried about what the implications of this conflict will be for South Africa, not just in terms of the South Africans that are in Mozambique and in this region, but for our borders and the risk, if any, that we face right now. As an expert in this field, what is your analysis of the situation?
Yeah, I think we need to be careful not to really moderate our fears. I mean, Cabo Delgado is very far from South Africa. Cape Town is closer to Maputo than Cabo Delgado is to Maputo. But at the same time, there are, of course, regional implications. I mean, Mozambican ports are an access to international markets for several SADC countries. Of course, South Africa is just a border away from Mozambique. Increasing insecurity might see increased flow and migration and add to issues around xenophobic violence and social cohesion that we've seen before. Of course, it could animate extremist cells within South Africa. We've already seen 1 or 2 South Africans go to Cabo Delgado to join the insurgency, which is a concern. Mozambique is also a node in international, transnational criminal networks like the drug trade, human trafficking. So the Mozambican state is a key ally in the fight against criminal activity in the region. So the bottom line, I think, is instability in northern Mozambique will have knock-on effects in the region. I think the longer the insurgency goes on, the more likely international jihadist networks like ISIS will begin to embed themselves within it and make it a very difficult conflict to resolve and extend its lifespan. So it is something, and speaking to what General Holomisa just mentioned, SADC tends to support incumbents in power and presidents and states act in mutual support of one another. But this sort of nationalistic thinking about security policy, when you're dealing with a conflict in northern Mozambique, which has a lot of regional dimensions, we really need to begin to shift our thinking to these as regional conflicts, not as national, localized conflicts that only affect one country.
Good Governance Africa's Stephen Buchanan Clark and the United Democratic Movement's General Bantu Holomisa. Let me thank you both for your time on the program tonight.